Hi, friends. Welcome to our weekly Golden Nugget. It's Friday, May 10th. And again, we're 1 day behind our aimed date of Thursday. So maybe we are transitioning actually to Friday Golden Nuggets. I'm not sure. But I'm here nonetheless. And our Golden Nugget for today is called Birthing Something New. I actually had a little bit of a difficult time with this reading and with coming up with a name even for this reading. It's a very interesting one. It's very tarot card heavy. So I actually pulled 4 tarot cards for this particular reading, and they're very well balanced and very interesting. So first we'll begin by reading the poem. The reading itself and the poem was odd. So many things are different today than they have been in the past. And I always look forward to sort of riding that uncomfortable space between what was and what is becoming and being really curious about that. So let us read the poem and see where that leads us. Something from your past, our collective past perhaps, is emerging, crawling to the surface of our unconscious realms. Something primordial, something that we had feared, a monster from the deep, now made almost comical in the light of day. The joy and exhilaration of youth without the fear of the unknown. What would we become if we could release our grip, just a little bit, of what we expect to be true, of what we expect to be just around the corner? Would we be free? Would we be more fully alive? So, a lot of questions. The image from this one was really interesting. It was like I was doing the reading. Usually I have this sort of holographic platform in my psychic space, and Spirit brings in sort of an image that, does like a little dance. So I'll have a little pantomime happen. But this was really interesting. It was like I was looking in the surface of this water, this dark water, and all of a sudden this hand, this sort of like amphibian-like hand emerged, and then a second hand, and this head started to rise out of the water, and it was like the thing from the deep, like the swamp monster, right? This kind of humanoid amphibian sort of creature. Very like cinematographic, 1930s or whatever film, thing from the deep. And as it turned around and looked at me, though, it was sort of, I didn't feel fear. It became kind of funny. And so immediately this sort of juxtaposition of these sort of primal fear objects, this primal sort of like that childhood fear that there are things that you don't know, that you can't see all around you, this feeling of presence, and how that can transition into adulthood as reality. That yes, there are many things that exist here that we don't know, and that doesn't need to be a point of fear necessarily, but can be a point of exhilaration and curiosity, and that can lead us forward. And if we don't hold on to that exhilaration and curiosity, it actually can pull us back into a state of apathy or disengagement from our lives. And so that's a really huge gift in this world of transformational healing, in this world of self-evolution and consciousness evolution, that we can remain open and keep opening those gateways in our minds to perceiving things, to welcoming in information in the different ways it comes. And also, really in a really real way, this is something that Spirit's been saying to me a lot, is releasing our attachment to outcome. If we can release our attachment to outcome and simply trust what we're actually experiencing in the moment, we can have a much fuller experience of life altogether. And that dovetails with another spirit wisdom piece, which is the truth of hope. At some point I was meditating on what hope meant, and Spirit said hope is trusting that every experience that you have has inherent value. That there is no experience you could have that wouldn't have inherent value. And therefore, there is no experience that you need to fear experiencing. We spend so much of our time, mourning the past and fearing the future and having a really hard time grounding into the present moment. And that's where all the juicy magic is happening. So I think hoping that the future is going to look a certain way can be a trap. a little bit. Not to say that dreaming and visioning and casting seeds forward and saying, this is what I would love to experience, this is what I would love my life to feel like. These are the kind of ways I would love to explore this world and my life. Those are wonderful, wonderful experiences to have and wonderful ways to care for ourselves and move forward. But when we become really attached with things like have to look this way or I will not, my life will be a failure, like that can get us really stuck in a pretty downward spirally place. So let's look at the really interesting tarot card reading that we got for this, which always gives us a little bit more flesh on the bones to the reading itself. So interestingly, they're kind of, you can see the colors and the characters are sort of communicating with each other. So we'll go one at a time in the order that I drew them in. Let's see, my belly is getting bigger, so I have to kind of maneuver around here. You guys are getting a different view today. You're seeing my altar corner here with this beautiful orchid that a friend gave me. Okay, so the first one we got was the Four of Swords. This is the only one that I drew that was not part of the major arcana, which I thought was interesting, but it fits in really, really well with the overall message of this reading. So you can see here, there's a person laying some flowers by a grave. And the timing of this card is springtime, which is kind of awesome, the rising sun in the stained glass window. But this is like the beginning of spring. And interestingly, so there's this grave. And the first thing that we're doing here is we're mourning what came before and what has come to pass. And having that quiet moment of discernment about what you're going to leave in the past and what you might carry forward into your future. And it's the death gate, it's sort of attending to the death gate, the death that has been, the winter, the passing, the dormancy, the death. So interestingly, the second one that got pulled was this, which is the Chariot. And the Chariot is, it's interesting, the color story is kind of the same here, right? And it's the other end of that. And I've actually been talking a lot about, the birth gate and the death gate in many ways are the same thing, or they're two different sides of the same coin. They're the same gateway. And here you've got, part of the reading of this card is the union of opposites, right? And so here they have people of different races and different gender expressions holding up a baby of their creation. And the idea is sort of the yin yang, the idea that the seed of the opposite is within us, and that, when we unify opposites, when we bring opposites together and can hold them both in our hands, that we can birth something really new and unique. This is the other end of sort of the vision that I often have of like the binary turning into the spectrum and us sort of trying to find and ride that dynamic place of balance in between. This is like the fourth or fifth dimension of that, where it kind of folds in on itself and it says, well, really the birth is coming from within, from this internalized sort of bringing together of these opposing forces. And so this card's all about balance, basically. The next two cards I pulled them simultaneously, and you can see there's the same character on both. It's the High Priestess and the Moon. So the moon is, represented by the High Priestess of the Moon. And these are really interesting cards. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the moon first. So the moon reminded me a lot of the reading that we did, the poem that I wrote. It's a lot about illusion. And so the moon is not above trickery and plays of light. And it's that idea of sort of what we fear in the light of the moon, what we see light cast on. The reading that's really interesting with the moon is that the things that happen at night are not any less valid or real than what happens during the day. It just might be a little bit more mysterious, right? So the power of the moon to illuminate exactly what we need to see. Like the oracle tells you what you need to hear, and not necessarily what's true for all of time, but what's true for right now and what you need to know. And then the second part is this High Priestess, which I feel like is really, a partner to these cards, to this card, the moon. And the High Priestess, is standing at the threshold. So she's the initiation. It's card 2. It's really the beginning of a new journey. So stepping forward over the threshold into a new initiation. and into the initiation of direct experience. So the idea of taking the wisdom that you've gathered in the light of the moon and really turning it into an initiation of experience, turning that intelligence or that truth into wisdom, is really significant. And so it's interesting that we've got these sort of, the way they ended up pairing up with each other is you've got the moon and the sort of death card, or this Four of Swords card, where you're sort of mourning the past and sort of gathering and feeling that, that quietude and that reflection, no pun intended. And then you have this side, which is about a new beginning and stepping forward with new wisdom. So it's interesting. It's an interesting reading. What is my take on all of this? Because it's a lot of information coming forward for this singular reading. Let's see. Let's settle on what the council wants to say about it. I think that this reading is about entering those liminal spaces, entering those dreamlike stages of our daily life, not just when we're sleeping, but in those times of expansion when we're awake. Taking those moments to breathe the air and to feel the fluids moving through our body, to feel the heat of the sun, to feel the food in our mouths, to really experience life, and to allow that magical realism of childhood to start to filter into our world through an adult perspective. So, you know, balancing those two things, balancing the magic and the interpretational nature of reality when you're a child, and bringing that into this place of fearlessness, courage, curiosity, co-creation, you know. So we have these feelings, these dreams, these desires that we have moving forward, but can we synthesize that through these sort of otherworldly connections that we have with these more liminal realms and subliminal realms? Yeah, that's something I'm going to work on this week. And I encourage you to do the same. Treat your dreams with respect. Try to hold that dual reality of inner and outer, above and below. And see if you can draw opposition back into the same space. See if you encounter any divisiveness or any struggle or any birth-death cycling in your life. And if you can pull them into the same place in your heart, and see if that conversation between those opposites actually births a new realization or a new reality for you and helps you with your forward movement. All right, my friends, much love to you. One note about the offerings coming through this business. We have a group class in Rise and Shine starting next week. We have 2 different class offerings. One is Thursday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that would be for those on the West Coast, which I know a lot of you are on the West Coast, that's 5 to 7 p.m. And those on the East Coast, that is 8 to 10 p.m. Ooh, time difference, that's fun. And we also have a Saturday afternoon class session that is from 2 to 4 Central Standard Time. So noon to 2, East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, 3 to 5. I think I did that right, and if I didn't, I blame the pregnancy. We're gonna do the Rise and Shine process, which is a 21-part process. We're gonna do it as small groups, so 3 to 5 people online. If you miss a class, everything's recorded. You'll have online coursework to accompany it, MP3s, written chapters to our trail guide, and it's basically the trail guide to awakening. So it's a 21-part process that takes you through a process of awakening. The actual 21 sessions were inspired in some ways by the major arcana. So every arcana card in the first, in the major arcana, which is the first part of the tarot deck, right? There's 21 cards, 22 if you include the Fool card, which is the leap of faith. Each of those cards has a matching segment or module. But basically, I downloaded this from my council, and the trail guide was written as a channeled piece from my council, and it's 3 modules. The first one is healing, the second one is embodying, and the third one is emanating or expressing. And so we're actually going to pull this whole process into an 8-month process where we do 7 weeks on, 2 months off to integrate, 7 weeks on, 2 months off to integrate, 7 weeks on. So it'll extend from now mid-May until next year in February. It'll be a really gentle but also intensive rhythm, I think, to do this in. And the group itself is going to keep the energy flowing. So if you're interested in that at all, I've tried to make it really affordable and accessible for everyone. It is, you can read more about it on fullawakening.net/rise-and-shine. Or if you go to fullawakening.net and you look at Work with Riza, go to the mentorship page and you'll find it there. But yeah, I would love for you guys to join us if that feels inspiring to you. And as always, deep gratitude for who you are and what you bring to this beautiful earth. We'll see you next week. Okay, bye.